My name is Asha Sampath and welcome to this new edition of Business Africa, your magazine dedicated to the continent's business and economic news. As usual, you can win $150 in our Business Africa game. More details later, but first, today's top stories. Supporting African SMEs weakened by the COVID-19 is the mission of local banks in partnership with the Islamic Development Bank.
The first step is to allow the company to remain intact, standing. During this phase, what had to be avoided was that the company suffered the effects of the pandemic, shut down operations and afterwards struggled to restart.
Handicrafts, a strong cultural bond. In Burkina Faso, the young generation is trying to improve their future by turning to trades that have been looked down on for decades in Africa.
Je vis de ça et ce que je fais,
I earn a living from it and can support my family. This painting will sell for $500.
Soon, no more water chores. Some progress thanks to the commitment of the European Investment Bank in infrastructure's improvement.
It really was hard work getting water. Most women had to wait until 2 o'clock in the morning. At that time, there's just a few drops of water.
The human toll due to the COVID-19 pandemic has officially exceeded the 3 million dead mark, with all over the world still incalculable economic consequences. In Africa, banks and states have joined forces to save SMEs directly impacted by COVID-19. Most often, this approach has taken the form of a partnership with the support of development institutions. Our correspondents surveyed Senegal and Burkina Faso to understand how the ICD, the private sector subsidiary of the Islamic Development Bank, has been working with local banks on the ground. A report by Abdoulaye Barry and Bertrand Ziba. While Africa recorded its first COVID-19 case in Egypt on February 14, 2020, the continent did not experience high infection rates as recorded in other regions of the world. But the economic and social impact of the pandemic remains quite severe, in particular for SMEs. The collapse of international demand, especially Chinese and European, combined with state health measures, have caused local consumption to drop drastically. African and international development institutions associated with public and private banks are doubling efforts and resources to support SMEs impacted by the pandemic. The ICD, the Islamic Corporation for the Development of the Private Sector, is a great example in sub-Saharan Africa, supporting several vital sectors such as cotton in Burkina Faso or groundnuts like here in Senegal.
The first step is to allow the company to remain intact, standing. During this phase, what had to be avoided was that the company suffered the effects of the pandemic, shut down operations and afterwards struggled to restart.
We are 300 kilometers southeast of Dakar, in Kaffrine, exactly where the Lansar company has known a solid growth in groundnuts since 1997. A strategic sector for Senegal, which supports a large part of the rural population. Today, executives of this SME have high ambitions and are preparing for the emerging global demand recovery.
Our goal is to process 100,000 tons per year. Now, we cannot reach our goal yet. And also for refining and an oil mill to install. In 6 months, we will put this in place and make oil and refined oil. The crude peanut oil is exported and the refined oil locally.
An investment financed by the National Bank for Economic Development, BNDE, with the support of ICD, which has set up a €12 million credit line specially dedicated to reinforce the resilience of African SMEs to cope with the impacts of COVID-19. For Lansar, one of its clients, the bank has set up a specific line of credit.
This time we decided to innovate by financing its equipment in the form of leasing, and the total amount is 787 million FCFA. We are in a first phase of its financing because the overall need of Lansar exceeds these 787 million. It is 20 billion because its objective, of course, is to go to grinding but also to refining.
an industrial project which should participate in the recovery of the country's economic growth, but also in the reduction of unemployment and poverty.
On an economic perspective and in terms of jobs, you can see that 210 people are employed every day, including 60 permanent staff and 150 seasonal workers. For me, this company allows some people to stay here and not go to Dakar to look for a job. It has a bright future, and we have to do it here in Senegal. Note that 2/3 of the rural population today grows peanuts. From a social perspective, it feeds many families in Senegal. So Senegal has an interest and an obligation to support this sector.
For Senegalese SMEs, La Société Lansar and Celle d'Afrique, both in agribusiness, Bio24 in the medical sector, and the transport company Sahel Bamtare are all the beneficiaries of the COVID fund for an amount of 10 million CFA francs. For BNDE, this partnership with the Islamic Corporation for the Development of the Private Sector has opened the doors to other institutions and therefore other sources of funding.
Thanks to the ICD, we have other institutions that have joined. The BOAD came, the AFDB came, Afrexim Bank is accompanying us. Today it is a moment of pride for BNDE to have supported more than 70 companies to the tune of 7 billion CFAF and helped to have saved more than 7,000 jobs during this period.
Burkina Faso is a good illustration of how development institutions and private banks can successfully put in place financial resources that meet the needs of SMEs in the face of COVID-19. With an annual production of nearly 3 million tons of cotton, the so-called African white gold is the other economic pillar of West and Central Africa. On its own, it supports 15 million small producers and accounts for 40% of export earnings. But this idyllic picture should not hide the difficulties encountered by SMEs in the sector, which have to face the vagaries of the climate and world prices, and for 2 years now, the economic and social impact of the pandemic, like here in Burkina Faso.
It must be said that, like other companies, Sakoma has also suffered the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. We must remember that this pandemic caused a depression in world cotton prices during the first 2 quarters of 2020, triggering shortfalls in sales. This pandemic has also caused delays in the shipment and sending orders.
In this case too, a partnership between a private bank, Chorus Bank International and ICD, enabled to set up a credit line to meet the needs of these Burkinabe SMEs who wish to strengthen their transformation capacity. Burkina Faso is only transforming 5% of its production today and meet the increase in international demand after COVID. It's the plan of Sakoma.
We have the project for the construction of the 4th unit within Sakoma. It was a project that dates back to 2017, before the COVID-19 pandemic, and also before the security crisis in eastern Burkina Faso. This is a new plant which will have a capacity of 45,000 tons of seed cotton per year for 150 days of work.
With an annual production of 80,000 tons of cotton and a turnover of 45 billion CFA francs, the company has nearly 900 employees and supports 60,000 farmers. Funds from Chorus Bank, ICD and BOA will help build its new production unit for an investment estimated at 9 billion CFA francs, nearly 14 million euros.
We have supported the Sakoma company through the construction of a 4th cotton ginning unit in Uggadugu, with funding of nearly 3.25 billion CFAF. We are satisfied with this funding, which will help strengthen our country's cotton production and also provide jobs for people in the area where the factory is located in Uggadugu. And we thank ICD for granting this facility to Chorus Bank in these difficult times when banks need liquidity to support their activities.
Development banks, as well as public and private banks, are striving to sustain African economies, and their work are now starting to bear fruit. These moves will allow African SMEs to once again play the leading economic and social role they played in their country before the pandemic. For the IMF, if in 2020 Africa recorded the largest drop in its GDP for 20 years, it should return to an estimated growth at around plus 3.4% in 2021. They are painters, blacksmiths, or carpenters. These young people have decided to make crafts, which have been neglected for decades, a source of income for themselves and their families. Crafts, a vector of social and cultural integration. This is a report by David Chiombiano.
This is the Dagnoan neighborhood of Uggadugu. Every day, Nufu Kabore works on the paintings that will be exhibited in restaurants and other public areas popular with tourists and art lovers alike. Although he left school with no qualifications, Nufu learned to master pencil and paintbrush and is now a professional artist.
Je vis de ça et ce que je fais,
I earn a living from it and can support my family.
Je le vends à
This painting will sell for $500.
250 000 francs. C'est pas du tout facile.
But it's not easy being a painter in Ouaga.
Très méconnu.
People don't really know much about it, and the tourists are really the only buyers.
Ce sont eux qui arrivent à acheter un peu.
Until recently, handicrafts were seen as a career option for people with no schooling, an undignified trade. It was neither valued nor valuable, and was often a tradition that ran in families or social castes. Although handicrafts are still stigmatized by some, the new generation of craftsmen is proving that this creative profession is a perfectly respectable livelihood.
We had a few problems with exports because we are a landlocked country and the shipping costs are high. But with the quality of our products, large-scale production, the training we give young craftsmen, I think we can safely say we are well ahead.
As the second source of employment after agriculture, the handicraft sector has a real employment potential, especially among younger people, who account for 60% of the population in Africa. These products are better promoted and backed up. They are probably the best way to fight off competition from imported manufactured goods, mainly from Asia, which are flooding the market. The Uggadugu Handicrafts Village is a shining example of the kind of support the state can provide for the sector. This company incubator brings together 500 craftsmen specialized in fields such as dressing, decoration, jewelry making, and sculpture. It is the ideal showcase for the wide range of handicrafts products made in Burkina Faso.
You can buy little souvenirs here, and I would even say that there is less haggling, and you feel less pressure than you would at the Uggadugu market. It's also a panorama of what you will find in Burkina Faso.
We have orders for recycled products, especially from the US, and they can be quite sizable orders. Jewelry and textiles are also very popular and can sell really well. The Tuareg boxes are very popular. People buy them as decorations or as presents. If you line them with aluminium, you can keep chocolate inside.
In the heart of the village is Gundama the Sculptor. In his workshop, he has a small foundry with 8 employees. His father taught him all he knew, and Gundama now earns $400 a month, about the same salary as a high school teacher in Burkina Faso.
Sometimes I make as much as a school teacher in Burkina. And other times I barely get by. But if you're constantly innovating, doing something new, the customer will always be impressed and will buy what you have. You can make a living from it.
The handicraft sector is thriving. The Uggadugu village's annual turnover of approximately $1.6 million is proof enough. Gundama and the other craftsmen at the village tour the world, going from one city to another exhibiting their work, and regularly attend training workshops to share their know-how.
Welcome back to the second part of our show. As I mentioned earlier, the economic effects of the pandemic are still difficult to measure, but we already know that various lockdowns have hit the informal economy hard. The production and supply circuits for fresh produce have been severely affected, as well as cross-border transhumance for breeding. However, according to the Food Crisis Prevention Network, it is conflict rather than the pandemic or climate change that has accelerated the spiral of famine. 100 million people could be affected in the coming months by the food crisis on the continent. And some good news for business travelers from West African countries. Qatar Airways has announced that it will serve Abidjan with 3 flights per week via Accra from June 16th. The Ivorian capital thus becomes the 4th African destination for the Doha-based carrier. Access to water, sanitation or electricity, these are still daily priorities for many Africans, and there is still a long way to go. Over the years, many international partners have supported and funded a series of projects that are gradually changing the situation. Example with the European Investment Bank, one of those financial institutions that work in West Africa to encourage infrastructure development. Take a look.
In the Diop household, water flows with a turn of the tap, much to the relief of Mrs. Diop and the entire family. The endless trips to fetch water are a thing of the past.
It really was hard work getting water. Most women had to wait until 2 o'clock in the morning. At that time, there's just a few drops of water.
Further east, in Senegal's hinterland, the situation was once no better than in Thiès. Now, thanks to PEPAM, the drinking water and sewerage program for the millennium, local inhabitants have improved access to drinking water.
We had to get water delivered. A barrel would cost around $1.50. Some households needed 3 to 4 barrels a day. That's at least $3.50 to pay for the water that you need each day. But now, thank God, it is easier.
1,000 miles away in Ouagadougou, the capital of landlocked Burkina Faso in Western Africa, it was the same problem. For years, the outlying neighborhoods were not connected to the drinking water network. For Sana Kabore, owner of a small brickwork supplying local building sites, the first problem he had to solve each day was, where do I get water? A problem that is now solved thanks to ONIA, the National Water and Sanitation Board. ONIA has provided water to 32,000 poorer households in the outskirts. Good news for the Kasalia service promoter.
We didn't have the water we needed to work. We had to get it delivered from all over the place by taxi motorbikes at $1.30 the barrel. Now, ONEA has set up standpipes, and we have the water we need to work properly. I use at least 10 barrels of water a day. At home, I have a water tap, and my wife no longer has to get up at 2 or 3 in the morning to fetch water.
One of the objectives of the Millennium Development Goals was to halve the percentage of the world's population that had no access to drinking water. With the MDG deadline in sight, considerable progress has been made.
Le Sénégal a atteint largement d'ailleurs les objectifs du
Senegal is well on target for the Millennium Development Goals, with access to 100% of households in Dakar and 91% in the hinterland.
11% dans les régions de l'intérieur.
Thanks to a low-interest loan from the European Investment Bank, it was possible to provide inhabitants with an extra 40,000 cubic meters of water. A larger water tower was built with sufficient storage capacity to supply areas that had water shortages.
Nous avons pu réaliser 721 km.
We installed a record 721 kilometers of piping for the drinking water supply network.
Ce qui a permis également
We were then able to provide 48,000 subsidized connections, benefiting more than 500,000 people.
Plus de 500,000 personnes.
In Uggadugu, the battle for drinking water is concentrated on Ziga, a project designed to provide the capital's inhabitants with the precious resource. The 3 million-strong metropolis is constantly growing, outrunning the country's ability to supply drinking water access. ONIA received 18 million euros from the EIB to finance its various investments.
The partnership has been very productive and has enabled us to improve and increase access to drinking water and to maintain the service with water treatment plant, water towers and distribution networks. It's an exemplary partnership and we would like to see it stepped up.
But despite the steady flow of investments, the battle for water is not yet won. With droughts come shortages. A vast water treatment plant is being built to provide improved drinking water access. In Uggadugu, as in Dakar, many challenges lie ahead.
We have been investing in the region for the past 50 years, and we will continue to be a part of the European drive to meet the Sustainable Development Goals after 2015.
In total, the EIB has disbursed 18 billion euros to finance over 1,300 projects, with access to drinking water a main priority. Great steps have been taken. But the community of backers will need to pursue their efforts for several more years if the MDG goal of providing drinking water for all is to be attained. With the necessary innovative measures, the private sector could lend its weight.
It's now time to reward our loyal viewers of Business Africa. It's up to you to answer to the following questions. If you're drawn among those who have given the correct answers, you will win $150. This is game number 551, so listen carefully to the two questions that follow, and good luck. First question. What is the amount of the ICD credit line for African SMEs? 5 million euros, 12 million euros, or 50 million euros? Second question. What is the rate of access to drinking water in Dakar? 60%, 85%, or 100%? You know the answers. You can participate now by going to our website, africaonair.com, answer the questions, fill out your form, and good luck. And of course, don't forget to include your contact details, name, address, telephone, email, and the number of the game you are entering with the answers, of course. This game, for example, is game number 551. The winner will receive $150 as our winner this week. Congratulations, you gave the correct answers to our game number 547. Here are the details. First question. What does the Mboto brand of Pointe Noire produce? The answer is peanut butter. Second question. What is the surface of the Ugandan forest? Answer, 5 million hectares. Well, that's it. Business Africa is over for today. I'll see you next week, same time, same channel, for a new edition of Initiative Africa. We'll meet Captain Clément Arbois, the commander of the Champlain French Navy vessel. He shared with me about his mission fighting pollution in the Indian Ocean. In the meantime, you can watch this program again on our website africaonair.com, as well as on all our social media channels. Feel free to share, like and comment using the hashtag #BusinessAfricaTV show. Take care of yourselves and see you next week. Goodbye.